There's only one way to enter the so-called fire zone, and that's with an army which these past few months has fought a relentless bush war against guerrillas opposed to President Obote. They led the way as we crossed the Luwero district. Only an hour from Kampala, maybe, but at once we saw the first of many deserted and devastated villages now under army control. Settlements where no one is allowed to walk, let alone reclaim their homes. A mile further, and the first of the huge groups of refugees who are now living in army-controlled camps. These people are all from the Baganda tribe, once the aristocrats of Uganda. Now they chant support for their long-standing enemy, the president, and his party, UPC. They have no choice. A war made largely in their name has left them victims of a fierce campaign to stamp out insurrection in Uganda at large.
Well, I leave it to my own countrymen and women. If they want a difficult time, they will support these lawless elements. If they want stability, if they want rehabilitation, if they want peace, if they want prosperity, I call upon them not to support such persons, but to report them immediately so that the security forces can deal with them and deal with them quickly.
There are now 140,000 people living in government camps like this one, at Kapeka, deep in the bush north of Kampala. Homes made of banana leaves and straw. But once we found evidence of malnutrition and starvation that has become an epidemic this past year. Children suffering unmistakably from marasmus, starvation, and kwashiorkor, protein deficiency. The sight of it alone was enough to shock Bill Turpin, MBE, CBE, an experienced Africa hand who's now been given the job by the government of taking charge of these refugees.
I never expected to see this in Uganda. I never ever thought I'd see this in Uganda. It has shocked me.
Every day, nurses from Save the Children and Oxfam handle more than 500 cases in their feeding station here. In their own minds, it's something of a losing battle against hunger, disease and fear among the people they care for. In this child's case, there's a vain struggle against a combination of measles, starvation and severe dehydration that had him refusing every attempt to make him drink. If the conditions within these camps are one cause for concern among the relief agencies, then so too is the situation outside them. The government does admit that their troops are now under orders to kill any male living in areas once occupied by the guerrillas. But people fleeing into camps like this report an army regime which goes well beyond those orders. There is, according to independent sources, including the churches, hardly a family in these camps that hasn't lost a relative, as the army has swept up through their villages, determined to destroy any local support for the guerrillas. Yet this is the army supposed to be protecting them. At the main hospital in the area, a German doctor told me that he has on average 30 cases a week who are victims of the troops. He led us to one.
She had a gunshot through the left and right upper leg and right lower arm and one shot in the abdomen.
Does she know who did it?
Yes, she told us soldiers. And the story was the soldiers were drunken and were afraid because on this day 3 soldiers were killed in a village about 3 miles in the north.
A child who'd filmed a matter of minutes before, the one too weak to drink, had died in his mother's arms.
A makeshift parade ground in the heart of the Luwero Triangle. The Ugandan government dismisses these rebels as bands. They see themselves as national saviors. 4 years ago, this man, Yoweri Museveni, led 27 disaffected soldiers into the bush. Today, his National Resistance Army numbers an estimated 6,000. The Ugandan Army's fighting methods against this rebellion have brought it into the centre of a human rights controversy. The rebels are convinced that their fight is a just one.
What else can we do if you have got a government which has closed off all other channels of peaceful change? What else could we do except to surrender, to resign ourselves to slavery? And we couldn't do that. as long as the people were willing. Because this is their own war. The people are actually the ones who urged us on to fight. If we do not have this support, we would never have started such a war. So it is to the people's benefit themselves. And the fact that they have been able to bear this suffering as we have seen is a testimony to the fact that this is their own war. These people are just using us. We are the instruments. If we had not started the war, we would have been declared traitors. We studied the dynamics of the situation. We knew that although we had 27 armed people, but we represented millions of potential soldiers. These thousands here, they were all civilians, all peasants. Many of them were peasants. So although the 27 armed people were a small number, they represented a huge force of potential soldiers. And we knew that with the correct tactics, we could enable the 27 to mobilize the millions who were on our side, but were not properly organized. But also have been organizing among other strata, like for instance the intellectuals from the towns, and also in the working class, and also the big businessmen. We also mobilize among them, as you can see, people of our external committee. Many of them are middle class people. So we educate everybody who is willing to work with us.
Early morning, and a patrol from the Seventies Army moves out to prepare an ambush. They're constantly trying to catch military convoys to replenish their weapon and ammunition supplies. This time they settle themselves just off the main road from Kampala. Some wait in the grass, while 20 yards ahead, comrades open fire as soldiers are spotted unexpectedly. Smoke from a grenade rises. Two government soldiers have stumbled into the ambush by accident, travelling along a track off the main road. The Ugandan government has always said that much of the evidence of fighting is fabricated. There's nothing fake about this man's fresh blood. Papers show that one of the soldiers had been given a day's leave to visit his sick child. The officer in charge explains that the two men had arrived while they were waiting for the convoy. He said they had to be killed because they might otherwise alert the army to the presence. Not quite the booty they'd hoped for, but the bodies are stripped of everything that might be useful before the patrol moves on. Shortage of supplies hampers the rebels more than any other single factor. They once had some from Libya, but those dried up 2 years ago. Colonel Gaddafi's conditions were too demanding. Now everything is plundered from the government forces. Lack of ammunition and proximity to the enemy means in training they simulate the far cry from the sort of training the officer in charge will have gone through. He was at the Mons military training school in Britain. Just as rigorous as the military training is the troops' political education. A crash course in political science, the movement espouses an old-fashioned mixed economy, and a thorough grounding in modern Ugandan history, or at least the rebel leadership's version of what's happened since independence and what part Obote has played.
Because Obote did not value self-determination. He valued the education of the people of the North. And in fact, it did not mean the people of the North, it meant himself.
The National Resistance Movement is a nationalist organization. It is a nationalist in the sense that it is fighting for the aims of the whole country and not for aims of a section of the country. Secondly, the National Resistance Movement is a democratic movement. It is a movement which is fighting for democracy.
Like this 14-year-old, many have joined the movement because they say they or their families have been ill-treated by the government troops. Speaking through an interpreter, the child said he'd seen his mother hacked to pieces with a machete by government soldiers.
bamusonyiwa nebagamba gweddayo omulaalo najja natulagirira maama waffe gyafiiridde netujja netumuziika ne taata.
And there are a number of army deserters who claim to have been sickened by what they were ordered to do while they were serving in the army.
We went on operation in Arua district, whereby an operation commander ordered the soldiers, the troops, to kill, smash everything they find in the operation area.
Government troops in training. The authorities point out they've been faced with the problem of rebuilding a disciplined and controllable army in the wake of the chaos left by Amin's fall. First, they had the help of a Commonwealth team, and there's still a small contingent of British troops training them now. But the people of the Luero Triangle say it isn't working. The rebels showed these skeletons as evidence of what the government forces have been doing. They said a village of civilians friendly to the rebels had been wiped out. The government claims that the atrocities are being committed by the rebels themselves, and the bones might just as well belong to their victims. And they dismiss as fabrications stories like those told by this priest. Himself bearing the scars of the attack, he said that in one incident troops had taken a 6-month child from its mother and pounded it to death with a pestle and water used for breaking up ground.
Groundnuts, then started pounding. It is estimated to 15,000. 10,000 being killed or massacred, and 5,000, about 5,000 have died from disease.
That he runs away from Obote, who is killing them, has been killing them, is killing them, even recently was sharing them. They were just very avoid to stop. That he will be hiding until the war ends.
The fighting has left one of Uganda's richest regions almost completely depopulated. Once prosperous villages now lie deserted. This is prime country for growing coffee, Uganda's most important export. Now the beans hang unharvested on the trees, left for the rebels to pick at will. The few civilians that remain in the area live in fear, hidden deep in the bush. They survive off what little they can cull from this once heavily cultivated land. There has been a let-up in the killing in the last few months. The rebels say that's because there are so few left to kill. And they claim conditions now compare badly even to the Amin days.
They are very much worse than they were under Amin. Because under Amin, first of all, Idi Amin was not killing people outside the intellectual class. He used to kill only the elite, elements from the elite who were threatening his position. Or sometimes over rivalry, over business, things like that. But he never touched the peasantry. But Obote is killing everybody.
With talk like that, there seems little hope that the rebels will come in from their life in the bush. Every 10 days or so, they dismantle their mobile headquarters, pack up the guns they've captured from the government, and move on. The houses they've constructed are destroyed, so that the camps can't be used by the government forces. A new set will have to be built at the next stopping point. Because of the rebels' mobility and the continuing problems of the Ugandan army, there seems little hope of the government finding a military solution. As far as a political solution is concerned, President Obote has said he won't negotiate with the rebels, but he will hold elections this year. He certainly dismisses that as a sham. He and his men will press on with the fight.
The common characteristic is that a popular cause, which is very popular, but backed by initially irregular forces which are not regular armies, and which are not as armed as the establishment army, by using guerrilla tactics, eventually they build up enough strength to overwhelm the enemy.
Museveni oyo nze nasookera omulabako yali avugana tractor ng'ali mu biziinaziina naye ng'alina abalyasi bangi ng'ajja eyo ewafumbira weeru nga batusaba emmere nga tubawa nga batwala nga bambi tebaatuyisa bubi tebaakwata bintu byaffe nti babitwale babirye.
Here on the left is the man he hosted, Dr. Obote, was a close ally of the former president for many years. it was Okello who helped to overthrow Idi Amin and restore Obote to power. But today he was calling Obote a dictator as he took his place as head of state.
For a long time, the authorities had tried to discredit the guerrillas, downplaying their numbers and describing them as an indisciplined group of country bandits. But the government's attempt to defeat them was a grisly failure. People suspected of supporting the guerrillas were killed by the score. And under Obote, Uganda acquired an unenviable reputation for unbridled repression and murder.
Tuko karibu pale, tunasonga pole pole mpaka adui mwenyewe anachoka na anaingia kwenye kitimba chetu.
We are hopeful that the brotherly spirit that is being portrayed by Ugandans sitting round the table will result in a full resolution of this issue.
These groups with whom we have already reached some understanding are in Uganda. They have put down their arms and they are cooperating fully and participating fully in the process of bringing about lasting peace in our country. The head of state and the chairman of the military council, General Tito Okello, has time and time again stated that all Ugandans are welcome back home. If we have any problems